I see.
I'd like to call the August 5th Killam School Building Committee to order, and we will take a roll call vote. Kirk?
Here.
Sean?
Here.
John?
Two Johns.
Oh, sorry, Sean and John. Yep. Chris?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Greg? No Ed, no Greg. No Greg, no Pat. Nancy? Yes. And they'll probably be coming along. So just a quick review of the agenda. We'll have public comment. We'll have liaison reports. We're going to have we have special guests tonight for a Killam student introduction. We're going to have reports from the designer about the preferred option and a sustainability update, an OPM report of financials and total project budget, along with warrants and invoices. We'll have a vote with that, and we will approve prior meeting minutes and then talk about future agenda items and next meeting dates. So we will start with public comment. Do we have anybody who'd like to make public comment? Jackie, anybody online for public comment? Killam liaison reports. Kirk, any reports, Kirk?
No.
Okay. The only report we have is tomorrow's visit. Do you want to just quickly?
Sure, great. Hi, everyone. Tomorrow we'll be taking someone's be going up to Uxbridge High School to see some of the spaces that they built out in alignment with their innovation pathways, which should see kind of more hands-on learning opportunities within, especially the space we're most excited to see is their engineering lab. They have a couple of spaces that we think they've used really creatively. So we must be there at 1 p.m. at Uxbridge High. We'll also, Chris is coming to also be taking some videos and some photos, so those who can't come will then be able to kind of get an idea of what we are then trying to build and replicate in some ways or what we could replicate in the basement of high school. So very excited to kind of open everyone's eyes to what the world for like high school innovation may be for us. And hopefully we'll walk away with some ideas. And Uxbridge is just one example of the many that are out there. We thought it was a good spot to kind of get started.
And I'm driving, if anybody would like a ride. Happy to pick up anybody. Great. Anybody else? No? Okay.
One thing on that too, our high school principal will be joining, I should mention too, so if you have ideas of things that you want to like make sure she's aware of, it's a good time to also share that with her. So just added that before.
Thanks, Tom. Killam. We have special guests from Killam today. They're going to talk to us about their school. Over here.
Hi everyone. If you don't know me, my name is Lindsay Fulton. I'm the principal at Killam. Tomorrow is my first official day back off maternity leave. I'm super excited. I feel like it's only fitting to get to see some of our rockstar students to welcome me back. I asked them to come and just kind of briefly talk about what they love about Killam, and then something maybe about the building that we like or that we're hoping can change. We've asked students along the way during our ed visioning process. It's been very interesting to see what aligns with what the educators say, but our students have a lot of great ideas that I know as we keep going we'll put into the process too. So you guys want to say who you are and what grade you're going into?
My name is Juliet Medeiros and I'm going in 5th grade. My name is Amelia Medeiros and I'm going into 3rd grade.
What's something you currently love about Killam?
I love that when you go into the cafeteria, there's this painting and it says, "Be the eye and kind."
Great. Would you like to see more murals and paintings still in our new school? Anything that you love?
What I love about Killam is wherever you walk, there's like paintings of koalas everywhere.
Koalas are our school mascot. We're very into being the Killam koala family with onesies and our shirts every Fridays show our spirit. Okay? What's one thing if you could add or do for our new building that you would change or create?
I think for the new building to add like stairs to like make it taller.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't tell
Stick
her
around.
any of the plans. Okay.
I think that when you go in the library, there's this koala carpet.
Okay, something like that to add to the new building? Okay. With the stairs, I didn't even tell you, part of our, maybe our new plan, do you think that different grade levels on different floors would be still okay for our community? Yeah. Where would we see everyone all together still? Where do you think, like, where do we currently see everyone together? Kath?
Do you like sliding down the railings and the stairs?
We don't have any currently. We don't have any
We're
currently.
gonna have some in the new school. Especially.
Anything else you want to share about or want for our new school?
Any questions? Does anybody on the committee have any questions?
Great job.
Great job. Thank you for coming.
I agree with you that we need a lot of murals and colors up on the walls. And the people who are designing the building are sitting right behind you. And I saw them listening,
Taking notes about all the koalas.
right? And
Yeah.
that's a great idea. And I love the idea of having a taller building. We didn't think we were gonna like that idea, and I think we all have really liked that idea of having a taller building. And as the kids get older, you go up on higher floors.
Grade on the third floor.
And having your own separate playgrounds too. This is something else that was really important to everybody here.
You think 2 separate playgrounds?
Sure.
They're flexible.
I like that.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We did have students in our visioning meetings, which was really awesome. Because they give you the information and the important stuff, and it just brings you back to remember. We should be doing. That was great. Thank you, girls.
Carla, quick, in addition to my showing up a little late, I think Greg Snepler has joined. Just for the record.
Hi, Greg. Thank you. Jackie's usually what we go up.
Yeah, she's got it.
Pat just wanted someone on record that was later than that.
Maybe.
And we'll go to Jenny for the designer reports, Jenny and Lee.
Designs first. Oh, actually, I'll just start because I'm just doing still update. Hello. Hello. Good to see you. So just, stand by. This is sharing in a funny way.
Jenny, if you're more comfortable sitting, feel free to sit.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
No, this can't hear. Look at them.
Do you want to turn it off?
Can you turn it down? Is it very comfortable in the room? Is it okay?
No.
Yes.
Maybe it was on my side.
I'm with you.
So just, this is, just trying to figure out why it's showing that black bar.
So,
I think it's a Zoom artifact.
Yeah, it's just, it's like my control bar, but I don't know,
Do you want Jack to present it?
Yeah, Jackie can show it.
no, she doesn't have the most updated one, so I do not want her to
It's okay.
present it. It's okay, we'll just manage. Okay, so the tasks completed, we have done the PSR cost estimate, and we'll share the kind of top line information with you tonight. We've been refining and developing the B1 and E2 plans per our earlier conversation, and we're also advancing the A1 additional renovation scheme and the code upgrades only, but those are kind of pro forma as required by the MSBA. And we have been doing a lot of work to advance the geothermal option. We had a great meeting with Pat and Greg to give us, I call them the Killam Geothermal Brain Trust, to give the construction managers viewpoint. And we've also connected with Brightcore, who are a geothermal contractor and also consultant. So they are putting together a proposal to drill a test well, and also working on some plans to answer a lot of the questions that the team has about the viability, logistics, and cost of implementing geothermal on the site. And then Lee's gonna talk about the preferred option. Lee,
So there must be some way to get rid of that bar.
okay, I'll try one with them. I feel like I know how, but it's just application window.
I do want to say one thing. I saw Pat at Swampscott the other day. Since he's building it, we designed it. Is it okay if I sit here?
Absolutely.
I'll do this so that nobody thinks I'm that person. I wanted to say something about the geothermal. In the end, Swampscott was a hybrid system, which really just means that it has mostly geothermal it has geothermal for all of the heating and cooling, that part of it, which is what geothermal does best. And then it had certain units, air source pumps on the roof for ventilation and stuff. It's a kind of hybrid. And we got there because it was the most efficient, and we had to save a lot of costs. It was during the pandemic and all that. We had to go back and forth a lot. I will say in the end, so I walked in and it was 90 degrees outside, and that building is cool as school. I mean, it is really nice. It's very comfortable. It's totally air conditioned everywhere, and that was on a real hot day. And it just made me realize it just hit me, all of this cold is, it's coming from the ground. It doesn't have big other systems or, and I just wanted to say that was just kind of a wonderful moment for me. For all of those who wonder if is that good?
Yeah, it looks good. Fiddled with enough things.
You have no idea what you did, do
I know what I did.
So hi, let's see. Is this?
You should be able to advance with the arrows. No?
Fiddled with. And so I'm here tonight to tell you what to do.
So
No.
forward and back.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Tonight what we're doing is we are following our very linear process, and as you can see, we've been unveiling this over a long period of time. Keep coming back to it, talk about different aspects of it. We started with traffic, we went on visits, we talked about education, we talked multiple times with the educators, and we've always told you the things that we've been hearing so that you don't all of a sudden say, you never told us that. And tonight, the idea is that last week or 2 weeks ago, I know that you voted to the larger pre-K option. So these 6 were the 6 options for the larger pre-K school that we looked at. And As Jenny said, we're looking at code upgrade A and A1, which is a renovation, but we know and we've kind of proven that A1 makes the site just about unusable as an elementary school in terms of square footage and size. You have a fairly tight site, and doing that would not really work very well. But we looked at it. You instructed us a couple weeks ago to continue looking at B1, which is a 3-story school, and E2, which is also a 3-story school, just a little bit different configuration. And all the other ones greatly impacted the existing building on the site during construction and all of that. So that's what we did. Now, what we've done over the last couple of weeks is really look at these two plans, and they were diagrammatic and not necessarily all accurate. We really spent time laying out the plans to a point where we felt like both of them were truly feasible and to scale. So actually this footprint right here is more realistic than it was 2 weeks ago. It represents a real building that, at least I believe, can be built. And this is B1. If you can see this pretty well, we were pretty careful to show a few things. One, you can really see the footprint. You can see how simple it is. You will see in the floor plans again that the gym and cafeteria on the upper part and the whole lower part on this facing south are the classrooms. If you look over to the right, you see the street, which is Haverhill, and we are no closer than 40 feet away from Haverhill. It sounds arbitrary, but to me it was an important spot because it is a taller building, and proportionally it was good to stay away from the street a certain amount. This is not because of setbacks. On the left, if you really look, you'll see its proximity, or even actually the distance away from the dotted line, which is the existing building. Do you see that pretty clearly? We're actually a solid 40 feet away from the existing building in this layout, which is more than I thought we'd be, and we could always push the building over a little bit more. But what we're trying to show on this scheme is that you can have some space from the existing building because you might have access, construction, and all of that. And that's another reason why this one's not so bad, you know? And it will be a good comparison with the other scheme. At the top of the site, well, we have good access, but at the top is all of the play areas, and that is actually a substantial amount of very safe, isolated play areas. And we have this wonderful loop, which we can talk about later, with drop-off and a separated bus drop-off on the side and all of the parking. And that has been vetted with traffic and also with fire and all of that. Now, if you look at this for a second, we're going to show you the next one. So you can see it's just a little different. Back and forth, doink. And really the area where the gym is almost identical. The center where you enter is about identical, but the wing is different, and we'll look at the floor plans to understand. And this is the wing that is a little longer, and the building and the rooms are a little more linear. It pushes a little closer to the road on the right and a little closer to the parking on the left. And you can see, if you look at the dotted line, there's kind of a corner right there where that lower wing kind of nestles into where the existing building is. You can see that we do have a little bit, it can be built. We've all built worse or better, but that is one of the factors here, is that it'll be trickier to build, trickier for access and all of that. So I just wanted to point out, other than that, there's not a huge differences. A little closer to the road. Cool? So those are the two.
Approximately how close is that to the existing building? Is that the same thing?
You know, it's about 15 feet and then 20 to 25 feet.
Okay.
So, yeah, that into that corner, it gets pretty, and that's the tightest we could get it. That wing is the tightest I could get it to get all the things to function properly.
And then what's the offset to Haverhill?
To where?
Haverhill Street, closer.
So it's a little closer, it's 30 feet at the bottom and 40 feet at the top. So if you go bonk, you see it's just a little more breathing room, but it's a longer, just a different building. And then you see here, I like the way that it's an L shape, but the truth is, with our constraints, it's constraining. Other than that, the sites are fairly similar. I think we can do well on any of them personally. Good for that? You get the sense. They're not very different. So then we show this. And we're trying to show things side by side a little bit. Both of these buildings are 3 foot, full rise, 635 students altogether. They're the same size in terms of gross square footage by the MSBA program and what you've decided on. About 123,000. The only other thing is there's somebody's face there, but for some reason, when we went through and got the pricing done, the option B1 turned out about $1 million less, 135 versus 136. I'm thinking, there's somebody's face there, but it's okay. About $1 million less. We asked the at this point, it's hard to know, but actually the E2 had more surface area to the exterior envelope, because the one on the left, B1, is so darn compact. So that kind of stuff costs money. Exterior envelope costs money. Insulation, waterproofing, brick, whatever it is. And other than that, you can see how they are. They're a certain building. Nice. So now that those are in your head, we actually do these by floors. We decided to say, what is the first floor of each one next side by side to the same scale? And I want you to know that, again, the gymnasium or the cafeteria part and all that stuff up top, and mostly the middle section where you enter, they're almost identical. And we did that on purpose because it was very much, as we went along, the most efficient approach to this building. And efficiency is important here because of your limited land use. So on the first floor, you come in, they both work really well with the admin. They have wonderful kind of lobby areas. At a scale like this, it's hard to tell, but see that yellow lobby area in the middle, that kind of up the page, where you first enter? That is 30 feet wide. So in real life, with a big stair and opening in it, that's pretty big. So if you've been to, different schools and you see a big lobby that's pretty open, 30 feet by say 70 feet long, that's not a small thing. And there's light coming down and it's open stairs and all of that. So we do have a good sense of scale of it, but sometimes it's really hard to determine in your head, wow, that's plenty of room. Didn't know that. But here's where it changes. If you were to walk in from the left side and enter and do the whole vestibule area and stuff, you walk in. Both schools, you would turn to the right on the first floor, and all of the green is essentially the pre-K center. It's its own school, its own world. It has its own, off the vestibule, it has its own admin, safety, everything. And so you would turn in through, and it could all be closed off on weekends and at night, so that the public can use the rest of the building, and the academic areas can be closed off, which is wonderful. So you would enter that, and after you've been greeted, all the kids, there are 12 pre-K classrooms, very strategically placed around the building. And in the very middle is the big room, which could be a glass kind of room for play and for other stuff, and conference and all of the stuff that the teachers need for the pre-K, but also for testing and for all the things that pre-K which is scattered around the town right now, bringing them all together into a place. And the difference between these two is that one is, on the left of B1, is arranged in the famous donut, which I like to actually think of it a little more like a courtyard, but it's interior. We'll call it a palazzo. It's very Italian. But anyway, the idea here is that, you know, you can see different areas that are kind of made with the different classrooms. At this point, we're showing the toilet rooms, the cubbies inside the classrooms. We're really laying out diagrammatically so that we know that it works. Very important to me anyway, that it worked, and to Jenny. It seems to have the stairs that we need to get out and to go to play areas. On the right though, when you turn in, it's a little different. You come in and the big room is right in front of you, but it has some outside window. And that's really the essential difference. This is more of a wing, and as you walk down this corridor, because it doesn't have big breakout spaces and stuff, you have little areas that open up for 4 classrooms, and 4 classrooms. You can see how they're a little bit clustered. So that's just a little bit different. Both of them would be, any town would be happy to have either one of them. I won't dwell on what I've heard so far because I'll wait for comments. So that's the first floor, and that's how they're arranged. Any comments about it? All the spaces are there. You know what? We even put in data rooms and janitors and stuff like that because we know they're going to be there, and we might as well start to count for them.
Lee, can you remind me again,
Please.
between B1 and E2, which one, and I know you mentioned this in one of the last meetings, which one has more natural sunlight? Is it the E2 one that's the way that that's facing, that's got more sunlight?
So that's the big difference between these in terms of siting and orientation. E2, all those classrooms there are facing north and facing south. And in a perfect world, we would do that, just because it's ideal. On the other hand, on B1, all of the classrooms are facing out and have east, west, south, and we put as many as we could on the south, most of them. And the way I look at it is, I'm not a big fan of Western light for teaching, and we'd want to make sure that we shade well for the Western low light, for glare and stuff like that. And so that is a real thing. I would say at this point that the middle space doesn't get natural light on this floor, although when we start go up, it does. And the big room does have a window at the end of it, but it's a pretty long room anyway. But in a vacuum, I would love all my classrooms to be north and south just for kind of heating, cooling, and stuff like that. But they all get good views, and we can try to control that stuff. Is that fair? Is a fair, balanced, pretty good answer? I mean, I think that either one will do you.
I just wanted to make sure I had it clear in my head.
Yeah.
Well, passive solar heating, there's nothing more efficient than that in terms of cost. It costs nothing to run and to install. So I think having south-facing classrooms is a big plus. Not just in terms of heating, but psychologically as well. People like sunlight in the winter. So the more sunlight we can get into the school classrooms, I think the better. And I think there's a distinct advantage to E2 in that regard. Maybe other disadvantages, but
it's such a funny so for light and view, I would say for view they are the same. For light, having more south and then north is more even lighting. North is pretty good lighting. When it comes to the actual energy efficiency, the thicker building will probably perform better for energy. That's been my learning, is that when I do a building that you have many layers and it's a little fatter, it has less surface area and it performs better. It's kind of a give and take on that. We'll see. So let's look at the next floor and continue on. So you can see the upper parts of these two, this is the second floor, are identical. Where we have the gymnasium on the second floor, and I think that we've all decided that that was really clever because the pre-K kids barely use the gym or may never use the gymnasium. And all the kindergarten and everybody else uses it, it's on this floor. But when you come in the evening or on a weekend, you just go up some big grand stair and you're at the gymnasium. And of course, there's so getting it up in the air like that is actually pretty, and the only thing under it, believe it or not, it's the service stuff. So we're not worried too much about sound, although we will insulate it against sound.
But having the gym on the second floor does require at least the lobby part of the school to be open during any gym activity, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, if you were, yes, and the lobby would be open for the gym. Oh, you're saying, how do you get into the gym? Yes.
How do you get into the gym, or how do you get out of the gym, more importantly?
Right, you would go into the building to get into the gym. You know, I haven't done a lot of elementary schools recently where the gym has a night inside-outside entrance. I think it's kind of a security thing. So I understand what you're saying. Yes, you would go through the secure vestibule, even at night and all that, into the lobby to go to the gym. That's a good point.
Does that have staffing implications in terms of weekend staffing if there's an event in the gym?
I think we could close everything off enough that you could get in, but that's really a question. How do people use the gym, now? I mean, well,
So right now they'll have to reserve it, and then there's certain things that we know that we have to staff, and we have a custodian on site and things like that too. So.
So you always have somebody in the school, janitor or something like that, whenever there's an event in the gym, is that correct?
Correct.
So that's standard procedure?
Correct.
We're not inventing something here that
Correct.
we don't need to have?
Correct.
Okay.
I just what I'm trying to visualize in my head now is what the lobby would look like, and is that an additional, unsupervised space where someone could sort of, find things to get themselves in trouble there? I don't think so. So I think being able to block everything off and just really being able to limit it to just the lobby as a passing space and getting up the stairs would be important.
I think to compare it to Coolidge, that'd be a good comparison. It would be significantly less than Coolidge.
Good point.
Coolidge, you go in and you go to the gym in the back there, everything's wide open, you're into the calf, you could lose a kid there when you go. And this would be designed such that you could limit to the lobby, and then upstairs, same thing, to the lobby, and then access to the gym.
Yeah, I mean,
It would probably be an improvement over anything, an improvement or even money with anything that we have now.
Yeah, I think that step one is that we can close off all of the academic wings completely. And then you just kind of pick away at what you want open and what you want closed from there. And we can do any kinds of, as we move forward, we can do any kinds of barriers or changes that way. That's a very good question, thank you.
And we did talk about also having the exits, right? So you can go from the gym right outside.
Yeah, so from the gym, there's a stair that takes you, on the very top there's a second stair, so if you were having phys ed and you wanted to take them out to play, they could literally go down that stair. And on the very first floor, you'll see it, there's on that left side, that's a whole kind of covered outdoor area. Like a whole like a arcade-like thing, but it's right open to so you have outdoor classroom there, outdoor area covered to the play areas. So at least in this design right now. And that's the idea is that, and then from the play, they could go even slide right back up into the gym.
I think also if there were issues with the lobby area, that this is set up so it could be closed off so that there's toilets upstairs as well. So if there needed to be just access from outside of the building and not through the lobby, it still could be rentable space now.
It could be, but you wouldn't have an elevator access, and I don't think that, so maybe it can't be. like,
need a second
You
egress.
need,
and you need 2 means of egress. So no, the lobby and the stair work in conjunction to provide a safe gymnasium space.
one thing,
Please.
Just one point of clarification on preschool, because I think it's important that we're adding spaces for them. So for PE for preschool, the multi-purpose space, that glass middle part that Lee talked about, would be a special space for preschool. So they would have access to some of the equipment there that's more suitable for the sizing and developmental needs. So they wouldn't have to use that gym, but they would still have a different space.
Right, they have we call it a big room, it's a rompus room, as well as a lot of things. Multi-purpose, yes. Good.
one thing that I think we haven't looked at yet is the topography of the site. We don't have a level site by any means. We have something like a 15-foot difference between high and low points. We have a sloping site. The B1 runs along the contours, which is always good, rather than against the contours, which is what the wing on E2 does. So it's much easier to set a uniform level for the first floor entrance from all parts of the building if you're running along the contours. If we take the elevation of the existing school relative to Haverhill Street, for example, there's about a 6-foot drop there. So it slopes down
Well,
quite significantly.
it slopes, it's interesting. Where the existing school is, well, first of all, we know that Charles is way up high, just to get into this for a second, and then slopes down. When you get to the existing school, it's fairly flat, and then when you get to the play field, it berms down. The play field is almost like a little valley or a little, I'm going to call it a pit, but it's not a pit. It's lower. It does slope in the opposite direction a little bit.
It does, yeah.
And then there's a little bit of a berm up again, a little bit back up again to the sidewalk of Haverhill. We have put in money to actually raise, I believe, that we'll want to raise the level of the new building up a little bit anyway for some structural fill to get it to a level where we can build it. It's not too low, and we can have the existing building there and usable as they're both happening. So we actually put in money to raise that a little bit. So we're trying to counteract some of that. We're not just building, in the exact slope.
I think the elevation of the first floor of the new school needs to be lower than the existing.
It'll probably be a little bit lower,
Couple of feet or so.
a couple of feet, but it won't be 5 feet.
No,
What I'm
it'd
saying
be a
is,
couple of feet, yes.
yeah, so I just wanted you to know that it is something we've talked to the civil and actually priced, so that, because we have so much experience with this kind of stuff. But it's a very good, you're right that the contours are kind of sliding in that direction, and that building kind of fits the existing grading. Let me go back and explain a little more about the two things. So thank you for talking about those things. In this particular, both schemes, there's some shared things that happen in the middle, very middle above where the entrance is, and that little lobby area that becomes more of a gallery with light coming in. And there's shared things that everybody in different grades would use. Then, when you get down to the two layouts, on the left at B1, there's the donut. Now, what the interesting thing about this is that you have the way it's all set up has everything to do with education. So this is clearly the layout that the educators like. It's still like they're shaking their heads like crazy, because this is the diagram that really describes their educational approach. The second floor on the left on B1 has the first floor all in a row. The first grade, the second grade on the other side, and the kindergarten. K1 and 2, perfect, smaller community area. And what happens is the media center and the STEM lab, which is the same person who runs the media center, runs the innovation lab, so it has to be adjacent. It's really, think of it as one space with glass. That's at the center, but there's a lot of glass, say, You go up a few feet, and then you have all glass and you're sharing light and openness. And so there is a acoustic separation to where all the kids are around the donut, but there's a lot of still connection because they see that as the community center, and they see this as being about community. When you look at this plan and you see the yellow hallways, but then you see those blue FL things, those are flex spaces, those are actually open. They're just areas called front doors or flex spaces that we saw in other schools outside of each of the classrooms. And what's nice about this again is that each of the classrooms, if you just look at like first grade and then it's flex space and all that, the relationship for little kids is that they can be, you can have some kids or some other activity there, but they can see them and they're right there. And to have a flex space down the hall a little bit or out of view is not good, is not going to get used by littler kids. Pat asked me that. Middle school, maybe. Little kids, that relationship of those front yards, that seemed very functional. So we're trying, in this scheme, if you were to go to one of those sides, that hallway is actually 20 feet wide. It's very wide and it has lots of stuff going on and it's flex. So don't be fooled by the little bit of yellow hallway there. It's very open. And that center space, that media center, when we get to the third, you'll see it's actually a 2-story opening and we have light flooding in a clear story, not a skylight, coming down the center into that middle courtyard. So we're actually have an interior courtyard and sharing the light out as we take the light in. So we think it's like a very traditional approach. When I say traditional, I'm going back 2,000 years, about how to bring light and air and energy into a building and how to create community. So this is the scheme that I know that the educators like the most in terms of its layout. The other scheme, I personally think, would be fine for lots of people. You go in on the right side, you see E2, and that whole center area is quite open. When you see those flex areas, they're combined, they're not those front doors. They're areas. I suppose we could redesign it and make them front door areas, but that's the kind of space you have, so it's actually quite a lot of space there in the middle of the building, and hopefully we could figure out some way to bring light down into those a little bit from above. Other than that, it's essentially quite similar, and it's really all about the layout and its fit on the site. Just so you know, every single one of these has those SG, those yellow rooms. Every single one has small group rooms, which are flex, but also special education, pull in, push out, teacher conference, anything you want. And you see how they're very carefully paired up each time. And the learning centers, you have 4 learning centers around the corners, kind of at the junctions between grades. So we really took into account how they talked about grade autonomy, how they talked about special education inclusivity, and trying to get everything to work as a community donut. If the kids were here, I'd say, how do you like the library? At the existing school, they have a library right in the middle. It just is a little noisy and we had to, redesign it in a different way. If I go to the next floor, it's really essentially the same, except on the left on both of them you have 3, 4, and 5. So as you graduate to bigger kids, and that's another learning community, we've broken down the learning communities to reasonable sizes where everybody knows your name. And that's really important in elementary school. And the bigger kids go up a little more, but you can see that the library is actually kind of this open, it might have glass around it, we're not sure yet, but it's kind of this open thing and even has its own little stair and a little balcony area for the kids at that age who are reading. And they love to, instead of the pit, we'll have a balcony. Elevated rather than depressed. Oh, we don't like the word depressed. So,
Very well said.
I know, it just came out right.
That was awesome.
Every once in a while I get lucky. So, but and the one on the other side, you can see on the right side, is just the other layout. You kind of pass around or through, and you'd be able to see out in a slightly different way. So those are the floor plans, and I want to go back here, and I just want to see if anybody has any more. Do the educators want to say anything? Because I personally thought it was important, or we did, to take E2 and to bring it to a certain level where it could compete. And now that you see them, I want you to please react if that's okay for me to ask.
Yeah, so we spent, both of Lindsay and I spent time working with various groups of educators, myself with a lot of members of our central office leadership team, district leadership. Lindsay spent time with her leadership team, a couple of staff members and teachers. The thing that kept coming through sort of the entire envisioning process was like the sense of community that people feel make Killam really special. Some of the quotes that were shared of like a student who's like, I love walking down the hallway and seeing like my friend or my sibling or my old teacher, and they feel it feels like a very familiar community-based feel for a lot of different reasons. The staff feel that the structure on the left, the B1 format, is a better sort of layout for people to feel like they're part of a group, part of a team, part of a kind of a pod than down a long hallway. They say they also felt that when we did the school visits, which a lot of us went on, and the schools that had sort of that pod feeling, they thought better captured that sense of community than maybe the hallways that were really long all the way down as well. They thought also just the access of services, sort of being able to put in kind of a tighter grid than maybe down the longer hallway was easier to access more quickly. Again, they liked both models. I think I credit LVA for building out, refining the second model that made it, I think, more compelling. But I think at the end of the day, the teachers continue to come back to the staff. And the pre-K staff continue to come back to the one on the left, really building what they want, the new school and sense of community.
Yeah, well said, I agree. I think also for B1, I was counting the other night, when I stand in the media center right now, there's 8 different exits or entrances that I can go to immediately get to different parts of the building and see different grade levels, so they still want that access, but so like in that model you really still can see the grade that's vertical to you, but the access to your colleagues is just right there, and the collaboration, access to small group space, flex space, I think is really conducive to our model.
A lot of the teachers also in the younger grades were talking about being able to, when the students are out in that neighborhood area, the community, they wanted to be able to see them. And there are better visuals with that donut shape than there are with the more elongated, because the rooms in the corners, they're, the visibility is cut because of stairwells. So that was really important for them to be able to see students right outside their doors as well, because that's still considered part of their learning space.
Let's hear from a different side. I mean, John brought up, just the north-south thing, which this building wants to run east-west. So I don't think it's a deal breaker personally, because I understand it. It's pretty nice. Having the space in the middle, I wouldn't have liked that library in the middle, except that we have all that light. It's essentially a 2-story place in the center of it all. So actually it's funny, you look at this and you don't get the sense that if we did renderings of this, all of a sudden you'd see, oh my goodness, there's this place in the middle of the building, in the middle of the academic building. And that was an interesting thing, because we talked at one point about putting the media center off to the side more, but every time we put it off to the side, it didn't feel right. So, yes?
So with the media center, are you thinking that it's all glass so that you can't see through? Because I guess I'm reading this as a solid.
Exactly.
And so that community part of it that we see at Killam when you're walking through the media center right now, because it's not separated, but this is going to be glass, you think, from a
Well-
noise perspective, or is it completely open?
Let me say it this way. One of the problems with the Killam library is that everybody's walking through it.
Right.
And it's actually a disruption as well. So we're trying to make it, put it in the middle, but also make it less disruptive and more straightforward. So, if you can imagine that it looks so solid in the middle there, because it's a dark color, but the walls around it, say it was solid up to about 4 or 5 feet.
Sure.
To all those wide flex hallways.
Yeah.
And then it was glass above that for until about 10 feet or whatever, right? The kids, there would be no disruption because kids are little. If they're walking along, they actually don't even see it. They just looking up a little bit. There's no disruption. And if it's glass around that, then all the light is being shared and you get the openness. So you're actually looking through when you're out there, looking through all these layers.
So I'm thinking of it in terms of community. I think the teachers want it to be a community so that when you walk, you can see your siblings or others. So I'm reading this as being a little tighter with that in the center, that you're not gonna be able to, the kids aren't gonna necessarily be able to see across to 2, or to grade 2, or to grade.
Unless we open the whole thing up.
I mean, I think I'm a little worried about that, their desire to have it as a community. And I agree that having it in the center makes sense, because now people can kind of see it, just like Killam. It's really quite extraordinary. But I'm reading this as now being, I like the light, don't get me wrong, I really think this is a nice plan. I just am not so sure it's what you think it's going to be. That's my concern.
I wonder too if we have pictures of Danvers where the media center was in the middle with the glass, like somewhat similar. Because I know that was downstairs, but I think that that's similar to this plan.
Yeah, there was a media center in the middle. That was glass, but it had both. When it was glass, it helped with acoustics.
Yeah.
But it was still open to everything.
I'm
On the other hand, we can go back and forth depending on what you choose. We can try it just a low wall without glass and see how it looks and how it works.
Yeah, sure, and
I
like both plans a lot. I just wanna make sure that what the teachers are visioning
Yeah,
are
I
what
agree.
is actually being shown here. Because I'm not completely clear. I think on that second one where it's the long one and you've got the flex spaces in the center, that's probably a little bit more open for that particular grade because they can see each other on either side, notwithstanding all the other issues that we're talking about. But from
That's the benefit of the second one of E2 is that, it has little real pods for each grade.
so I just wanna make sure that that's what the teachers see is what is actually.
I think we've already talked with the educational group quite a bit about what that line is like between the yellow space and the dark blue space.
Yeah.
And with this plan, there's a whole range of possibilities, right? It could be just furniture and there's just a different kind of carpet. You're like in the corridor or you're just in the library and it's all just open, right? We talked about that and I think the sense was we probably want a little bit more definition, a little bit more acoustic control. So then maybe it's glass, maybe it's not a 48-inch high leaf, but a 40-inch high so the kids can see over it as well, which is what Nancy was saying.
Or maybe some of it's tall glass, some of it's a little bit higher. I mean, it could be a whole mixture of it, yeah. I just wanna make sure that the teachers are seeing it clearly.
And I think that's an area for us to continue to work and refine and figure out exactly what that looks like. But I think we've talked about it and
Yeah, I
we
think
understand.
honestly too for E2, the management piece that, I forget who just said it, but the visibility and being able to know what everyone in your class is doing is a huge piece of hallways.
Sure, yeah, that's right, I can see a free-for-all, the big ones in the center, yeah, I'm not saying that that's a good thing, I just, from a visual standpoint, I wanna make sure that what they're looking for. Cause I like both, I do like the B1 a lot, for its efficiency, but.
Nancy, I really appreciate you raising that. I think that's a really good point. And I think something that we like talked a lot about too was that, you know, the having a totally open feel is more of a community feel, but there's obviously major drawbacks to having that. It's just, so like, I still look at this and these hallways are still pretty wide,
Yeah.
right? So I think,
Space.
you know, like it looks tight up in this diagram right here, but if you actually, you know, measure those out, it's still a pretty wide space, and there's still a lot of traffic of kids coming from, you know, the K students having to go in and out down the
Throughout,
hallways to get where
yeah.
they're going, 1 and 2 going. So I guess they're envisioning it's feeling like that pod,
Excuse me.
but I hear you that there's this in the middle that we
just
have
make
to
sure
be
that pod
thoughtful about
works.
what that looks like in a way
Yeah.
that still feels like there's some like control in there, but doesn't take away from what we're actually trying to get at. I think that's a really good point.
It's interesting. I came in this evening with a preference for E2 actually, and Tom, you were making the comments about teachers preferred not having the long hallways, and then the conclusion was the linear layout is the one to go with. It surprised me. I guess I thought you were saying E2 was where we were headed, so that caught me off guard. I think that the one thing I would say, or two things I would say. One is, if I think about the school, I think Wood End is probably the school that has the most similar layout to this in terms of the wings and the structure here. Wood End, they've chosen to put the classrooms across from each other versus lined up linearly, and it seems to work. I don't know if I don't know who made that decision when or how intentional it was, but it seems to work. The other thing about the E2 that I liked, and it goes to Nancy's comments about the media center. If you think about the way that this one in E2 is structured, where say 2/3 of it is surrounded by by other spaces that presumably would have solid walls, that outer third could be glass, could be could be open, so that you still get that sense of everybody can see what's going on in there, everybody can walk by, everybody can appreciate it, but it gives you the ability to create spaces towards the back of the room that are a little bit more closed off, a little bit more protected when the media specialist wants to have a small group or whatever they might be doing in there, right? And again, I'll use Wood End as an example. It's glass all in the front, but all the spaces where they really engage kids happen in the places away from the glass. And so I liked E2 for those reasons. I thought that the sort of the pods of 4 made a lot of sense, particularly knowing that the flex spaces are open, are open spaces and not walled off in any way. That being said, I'm gonna default to what our educators think is the right answer, but it surprised me. And again, I mean, even the comment you were making, Tom, I thought it was going to a different conclusion.
I would also say that's a good point, Sean, and I think the other one, the hall, I also felt when we were the school visits, the ones that had the long, so I guess E2 more model and the flex space model, they felt huge.
Yeah.
Like the hallways, like when you had that flex space, it felt like it was just like it felt like you could fit a little mini basketball court like in the middle, like it just felt really big. And that was a school in, what was the one that had the geothermal wells up at the back?
Acton,
No,
Ashland.
no. Keep going.
Watertown.
Watertown, ding, 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 the Watertown. I went up to that second floor and I just didn't feel like it felt like an elementary school. Like it was so long and wide. And again, like it is hard for me to like translate some of these exactly what it will look like, or maybe my own argument is, doesn't always add up here. I just feel like that sense of, kind of community didn't feel like with the long kind of rectangular shape, it was as achieved as well as when you were in a kind of more boxed in group. But again, I also, to be fair, our educators I think have a great, like their vision for the shared workspaces, for the small group rooms, like that's what they know and that's what they do. You're asking all of us to go out of our comfort zone to like visualize new spaces. So I think that I don't think the educators are going to be offended too if that people are helping us to see things a little bit differently than maybe we are envisioning them now either.
Yeah, the flex space, the one in Danvers I really loved because it had a purpose. There was a smart board out on the wall where you could have the whole first grade come sit here. I'm going to talk quickly about bus expectations, or we're going to talk about the word of the week. Then you can go right back into your classrooms. They had windows where they could send buddies out to read right in front, and they could still be teaching a small group at the horseshoe table and seeing that Johnny's still working. So I think the flex spaces, how, Nancy, to your point, how we craft that middle part is really crucial to that vision. And if we can do that in either model, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, the way I look at it is every place is different. This seemed to be the diagram. The one on the left, B1, is more like the Danvers School where you go down a wide hall and they have these front doors in these smaller areas where the kids can come out in smaller groups. It's less about, when you're in first grade, you already have a classroom. It's not like you have to go spill out and be in another room. If you were doing lots of project work out there, like if you were saying, we have a big STEM program and we're gonna, this was at Swampscott. Swampscott, they have those flex spaces are gonna be project lab spaces. But that's not what you're talking about. You have a STEM area. They're more like smaller little front door, and they kept calling them front yards. So that's what that one does. The other one is a little more middle school-like, where you have a bigger space in there where you're gathering a whole bunch of kids. If your goal was to take the whole grade and bring them out into that space, what are you really gonna, I don't think you're gonna take, 100 second graders and put them in little, why? It would be chaos.
I'm surprised.
But it's just something to think about. Is a very different approach, and the way that you interact with the library is very different here too. This is much more of it's a central place. The library at Killam is kind of like, it is this weird pass-through place where if you have enough eyes on you, you can send kids there to behave. So it's like a community watching place. But if it's off to the side, you only have one person in the library, they can't watch everybody. So that's why they like that a lot, I think, is because, think about it, everybody's kind of looking at it. They're all watching it. That's, I think, why they like that kind of concept. But you're right, it has to be done nicely.
But one thing that struck me, that you said, is that community is not necessarily that everybody is there. The community is that people pass by each other. So that does push me back to B1, because now you've got more confined spaces where people have to pass by each other in order to see each other. So
Like I'll stand in the media center of the library right now with my computer, and I can see almost every class pass at some point. Really pinpoint what's happening going through there.
Lee, how from E2, that flex space from, across the hall, how long is that space? Like from, if you take the second grade, for example.
Just the flex space, or
Yeah.
including the yellow collar?
The
The
yellow-
hallways are
flex-
about 8.
It's all over.
The flex space is about 20 feet, 24 feet. About 24 feet wide by 30, 40 feet wide. That's a big room.
those are big, that's big.
Yeah, they're big spaces, and there's something kind of like, now we can always arrange them differently. We can always put a hall down the middle and try to put them on the sides. We can do different things. A lot of, but it's just a different arrangement. One has these layers, there's the center space, and then, which is like total public, and then there's public-private, which is the flex zones, and then there's private. Like, it has these weird, these interesting layers. This one has more like everybody's walking by it. We can figure out how to make those smaller if we want to.
I had the similar experience in Watertown. Like, I felt like, I think the hooks threw us off too. The hooks were just really inefficient.
So they tried to do like project space and all that kind of stuff up there, and maybe it was just like, what is all this empty space?
It's a lot.
One of the things that Pat asked me when we were at Swampscott was these breakout spaces. Do they get used? And I said, they get used when you have little kids, they get used if there's really, really good supervision and the teachers feel comfortable, because you can't send kids out on their own when they're really little. You have to be able to see them, or there has to be somebody working with them, an aide or something, or whatever it is. And to keep them tied up, like right out in your little front yard, with a little fence even, if you had to, like, that is how people deal in the family with their little kids. And I just kind of see it that way.
But so like in B1, you'd probably have the teacher wall on the side, next to the flex space.
So there'd be windows there, there'd be glass there.
Yeah, there would be glass,
Well, and the teacher's moving all over the place.
right?
But the flex spaces are actually also where in these upper grades where the cubbies are. So they're where everybody gathers to, because they didn't want them in the classrooms in this age.
Mhm.
And so it's actually where the cubbies are right there. The kids use the cubbies. So it is a kind of a working space.
Yep.
And anyway, that's the difference.
I've liked B1 since before B1 was B1. You know, I like the efficiency of the design. You get a little less footprint, so that gives you a little more site area. If we're doing geothermal, it gives us a little more access for that. At the end of the day, long term, it gives you a little bit more space for play area or parking or bus drive-through. In the back of my mind, I've always had the question of the interior layout, and you know, if you'd be sacrificing it, and it really doesn't sound like we're sacrificing it. I really like especially at the pre-K level. I love the concept of the big room in the middle there with a lot of glass, as opposed to the E2. The big room is you get an exterior window, so you get some natural light into the big room, but otherwise it's shut off. And I don't know from an educational standpoint, it's where I check out if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But just the concept of that room being right in the middle of the donut. I think the pre-K, I really like the layout of the pre-K, the B1 over the E2.
But what's also interesting about that is one of the things that we were told when we were going to Killam in the first groups was they actually liked the layout of Killam. There was an intuitive wayfinding in Killam where you knew, like you walked, and then there was this thing you kind of looped around. So this thing about looping around was more intuitive, and being able to see things was more intuitive than going down a hallway and going, okay, now I have to turn around and go back. And I think that's one of the things I keep hearing is this kind of like intuitive. So a scheme like this, when you're walking around that center glass box in the bottom, you see all the front doors, but there's that middle part, that's the town center. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you know where all the front doors are. And it's very different than a longer thing. And I don't really, on the very first floor, the layout of the pre-K, it ain't my favorite because it is a corridor and we don't have breakout spaces, so you don't have a lot of give. But it'll probably work just fine for them. But it is kind of nice to walk around that center space and everybody kind of goes to it equally, you know, and there's some kind of thing there. So it's very interesting. And also I could, we would build either one of these, we'd be happy to.
Can I ask another question about the B1 site plan? And forgive me if this has been discussed already, I don't recall seeing it on a previous version. That pre-K space, the pre-K play space that's outside of 4 of the classrooms, how do we feel about that?
Well, it's interesting. On this one, we were starting to mess around with the idea of having the pre-K play space. Well, first of all, the pre-K play space is separate than the other play areas.
I appreciate that aspect. I'm more thinking, is that a massive distraction to those 4 classrooms that you're gonna have a play space right outside their windows?
It'll be okay.
I don't know, like we can move it, but that's a good question.
Lee, can you circle where it is?
Oh, I didn't do that. Oh, so what, right now in this drawing, we're showing a pre-K, a play space right out in front.
I mean, like literally like kickballs are hitting the windows.
Well,
Wouldn't be kickballs.
pre-K doesn't do that. See, that's the thing is that these are.
They kick the ball like that though at preschool.
Okay.
So they can't though, seriously. Currently our small preschool player, which won't be anything compared to what the new one is right outside a couple classrooms, and the only time that it's an issue is like state testing where we ask them to go somewhere else. Otherwise, it's usually small enough classes.
Yeah, but you only have a few classrooms using it now versus 12, right? So with 12 classrooms, you're gonna have somebody out there much of the day, if not most of it.
Right. So let me just say what the reasoning here is and how it can change. First of all, that's a 40-foot wide area right there by, say, 100 and something. So it's actually quite large. And there would be a fence, obviously, and the kids could play there. You won't have to do it that way. One, we didn't want to put it on the street side, but you can, as long as it's fenced in. So we put it there. In other places, you can put play anywhere, or it could be the WOW Center, and you can have the kids. But it would be nice for the pre-K, since they're on the first floor, to be able to go right outside those hallways to play, and then come right back in, because they're very small. They're really small kids. And then for the bigger kids to go through maybe the lobby and the cafeteria and do that whole routine. The pre-K kids don't go to the
Now
cafeteria.
that I'm thinking about though, who would that affect? Because on the first floor, it would just be preschool right there. So it would really be the second floor is third grade?
I think it would be the preschoolers on that wing, wouldn't it? I
Yeah,
mean,
just be the
Those
three
preschool
classrooms plus the one
Oh,
on the
yeah.
end.
So like it would be
Four
preschoolers
classrooms,
affecting preschoolers opposed to,
Or we just move it and don't put it there. I don't want to make a big deal out of it. There just is space there. And it could be gardens,
It
like
could be the WOW Center.
it could be the WOW Center. So I don't want to get too wrapped up in that, other than there is a little more space there. We could also push it farther from the street, try to do something along there.
Could I just jump in there?
Please do jump in.
I've been thinking all the time about the streetscapes and Haverhill and the height of the building. How high is this building going to be off Haverhill Street? It's probably going to be 45 feet or something like that, right?
So here is very, now, these are not designed buildings. They don't have fenestration, they don't have openings, they don't have materials. But this is a building from Charles Street, looking across and seeing the gym on the left up high, the arcade, the front door, and then what starts to be the one wing going this way, one wing going that way. So you get a sense of the scale, although obviously where it's scary to show you things like this because it's not designed, but it is kind of the right scale and it's in the computer.
But in terms of height from Haverhill Street, the ground floor of the building is going to be higher than Haverhill Street by several feet, I think, right? Maybe 4 or 5 feet.
No, I don't agree with that. The Haverhill, we will either be level with Haverhill Street or lower than Haverhill
Well, then,
Street.
if you're level with Haverhill Street, you're going to be 5 to 6 feet lower than the existing school. That's the difference in elevation between the existing first floor school and Haverhill Street is about 5 feet.
There's a berm that comes back up again. It drops
It's
and goes back up.
It's still about 5 feet down. It's still something like that.
Help me. I mean, I've walked this, I've
I
studied
think John
it.
might be right.
No, just tell me what the
Usually
idea
is.
Because I know
so-
it slows
I
down.
walked
So
it
the
yesterday, let's put it that way.
No, that's okay.
So the building height, we're thinking 14-foot floor to floor, so that would be like a 43-foot, 42-foot
The actual
for the
height.
building itself.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so if it's a couple feet above Haverhill Street, then yeah, 45
think it's gonna be
feet,
more than
42
2
to
feet.
45,
Yeah.
this is a
Yeah.
reasonable range.
And I think that's probably not good for the Haverhill streetscape, to have what is a monolith somewhat close by. I mean, I know you're setting it back for 30 feet, but it's way above zoning requirements in Reading for that area. And I'm wondering, why can't we slide the classroom wing on B1 leftwards
So,
and put
I'm
put
listening.
that play space on the street
Right.
side?
So this is good. So here on this scheme, we have room. I tried to say it. We have room. See the dotted line of the existing building.
Yes.
We could move it quite a bit to the left, to the west, further and further away from the street. And the thing about the street is, like, you're going to have fencing anyway. And the kids do actually play along the street. There's a fence. Yeah, I mean, that's where their field is. If we did what John was just saying. You have a little, he has a little stylus, and I have toys right on it?
Yep.
Okay, so if we moved it even this much, you'd still be a solid 25 feet away, even this much. And then you'd be moving this stuff over this much, and you'd be upwards of, well, 60 feet away.
I'm not suggesting moving the cafeteria and the,
I think it goes with it.
well, not necessarily.
We say just preschool.
Why not just slide the classroom in?
If we can
I know it interrupts your nicely thought out connection
But
between.
John, it interrupts her nicely thought out. No, it's okay. Let's not get bogged down in that. It's okay. We can
Yeah.
do anything.
I'm just wondering, how important is it to
If
have
you
a-
did it,
have a
if you
better view
did
from
this,
Haven Street?
if you did that, you could get away from Haverhill Street more, and you could put areas all along here, which I don't think, with trees and with a fence and all of that, they're safe. It's not like they're noisy, kids play there, and they're actually good areas for little kids, and they can be safe. And then you just have pushed this over, and so when you go, and so you get a sense of that, right, because that's what you said. And then when you go over to something like this, which we show you because we want you to know that no matter what you do, it's pretty big. And the one that we're talking about, while it has some stepping going on B1, if you push it over another 20 feet, it just helps even more. And it gets it away, and we're not showing street trees and things like that yet, and we haven't designed it. But I don't have any problem with that at all. I think it's a wonderful idea.
To Sean's original point, that just shifts it from 4 classrooms on the left to 4 classrooms on the right.
Yeah, but there's probably enough space on the right to not have it like adjacent to the windows, right? To have it be.
Oh, we can, I mean, we have to, instead of going right up the middle here, you're pushing it to one side a little bit, still staying away, but you're making a choice to create more space on one side. And it's actually away from the drop-off and stuff, because putting it next to the drop-off, it ain't perfect. I know that when we drew it.
I think it's something to think about. I mean,
It's definitely, it's better, it might be better.
we don't want to design this building by committee by any means. No, we don't do that. That's the council.
Do you think that would also that would alleviate the comments about spectators on the playground? Because there is quite a few people who wait in the parking lot or in that area and are seeing everything there, but on the other side, it's a little more private and conducive to social development.
It actually would be pretty cozy back. I mean, the street is there, but then there's the sidewalk. There is some berming going on.
And there's some trees.
And then we can adjust and put even more.
Yeah.
And then we'll have fencing, and especially the little kids, that pre-K, that will have, and I like that it also connects to where the center of the building is, and maybe even so I'll just show you another idea. I think we're doing okay here.
An advantage of that also is that by having a little bit more space on the Haverhill Street side, during the interim phase, after the building is built and open, but before the old building and site work is torn down on the Charles Street side, like, school is gonna open, and then that whole side from the new building to Charles Street is gonna be under construction. So there's gonna be a real challenge. Mike Carroll keeps bringing up, you're gonna have a challenge with drop-off, playgrounds,
Yeah.
and parking
Yeah,
during
some
that
playground.
interim year, 9 months to a year.
Good space.
Having a
for-
little space gives, I don't know what the solution is, but there's a little bit more to play with in terms of site area to work with.
Here's another reason why John's idea is so good. If you look at that first floor plan, up and see those orange spaces, that is the cafeteria with lots of glass. And it could open right out to that area for intermediate play for some of the kids. And then, like, we wanted to create some kind of patio or, area in that little notch and stuff like that. So now, if you think about all that happening, then you've got that, and that whole area, you could slide right out, and that whole strip there can be used for certain kinds of play after
It
cafeteria,
can
and
also,
cafeteria.
it can also be used for geothermal wells, much more efficient.
Geothermal wells, somebody say.
I said that. Note that I
No,
said that.
I note that John see.
I don't like them.
And he doesn't even like them.
I don't even like them.
He's still
But I think what we were trying to do is, whenever we show something like this, we're like, oh, don't show it too close to the existing building because it's construction. But I think there's a place,
Yeah.
maybe 20, 25 feet away from the existing building where actually it's so much better than the other one. But 20, that's pretty good. This room in this direction
22 feet.
is 22 feet. Imagine having that much room, not terrible.
I've been
Yeah.
counting ceiling tiles this week.
Now, I've been putting on my structural engineer hat, and I can't see any good place to put columns in this building.
You're kidding.
I'm not kidding. You look
I've
at,
stacked this page.
look at B1 and look at classroom
This
one.
thing is beautiful.
Try to find a place to put
This
it.
plan is beautifully stacked.
No, it's not.
John, I
No,
don't see
the-
any mechanical shafts either.
Oh, burn.
Okay.
Moving on.
I see them. I see them, Lee.
It's fairly organized, but for this stage. So I agree that when we show a drawing like this and we show behavioral, it's not that we're showing that it works. It's showing that it needs to get better. And I agree with your assessment because I'm uncomfortable with that closeness right there. It'd be nicer if it was pushed back a little more and we could use that space. I agree.
Something, and something maybe Colliers could look at in, between now and our next meeting would be how much space we need. We've got a couple of different things going on during construction. One is egress out of that building, so maintaining a certain amount of space, which we may not need to maintain much at all, but you can look at the existing building and figure out what we need there. And then, some rough idea of grade differences. If we're gonna be 5 feet below, if our new foundation is 5 feet below the existing foundation, we should be plenty far away from that, but we also need to have a safe area. So, it's kind of like a preliminary construction sequencing logistics plan.
Definitely no backfilling.
And what happens
There's gonna be
when
5
we
feet.
move the other building? If you're already, if the, and I don't know if that's probably already being, considered, but like if the existing building is so much higher than the fields are today, where the new building's gonna be, what happens when the old building goes away? And,
That's why the new building will be raised up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it needs to be closer to that when you consider, I totally agree with you.
2 to 3 feet.
We haven't figured out exactly what the elevation is. We wouldn't do that yet, but
We can start to gauge if
yeah.
it's 2 feet, what does it mean if it's 2 feet? What does it mean if it's 5 feet below? And, 5 feet below, we're gonna wanna stay 10 feet, a minimum of 10 feet away from that, from the existing building, just for underpinning and undermining. And then to your point, during the demolition of the existing building.
So this is our quick, back and forth, and almost all of them do both things, but I think you understand what the differences are at this point. Between about windows and daylight.
Just for a second, sorry, I've had my hand up here for about 20 minutes now.
Oh, well, we can't see you.
Sorry, Mike.
Yeah, no worries. Just to maybe touch base, work my way back just briefly. What Pat was mentioning on the underpinning, we can certainly look into that. I think the fact that the existing building is mostly a slab on grade will help us with that a little bit. I do have the GIS map. I'd be happy to share it, but I don't know if it really needs to be that level of detail here. But I think we are a little bit lower in the field, not quite as much as you think. And I think we talked about this with the estimators last week about bringing in some fill because we don't want to have to do a lot of additional earthwork and a lot of extra work after that old building is down. So I think trying to find that balance there is important. The other thing I did want to just touch base on real quick, if you could, maybe flip back to one of those floor plans, like the second floor or the first floor plan. Just to kind of hit on what Nancy was talking about earlier, I do feel that the E2 might actually be a little bit more open than people are understanding and actually contributed to that openness, that neighborhood feel that they're talking about. I know there's a lot of concern that these are long hallways and things of that nature. I just wanted to kind of put it in perspective. If I look at B1, that red room that says STWR, from there down to the kindergarten area is about 120 feet. And if I look in E2, from the media center going left to the T by the second is about 120 feet. So these aren't that much different. It's not like these hallways are like, when people are saying we're worried about the long hallways, there is a longer hallway on the upper side of that E2, but with media center breaking it up and everything, the hallways are really relatively equal in length.
Yeah, and we really worked on E2 to scrunch it up to, make it more compact, and I think that's so it is different than it was a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and I do really appreciate all the extras that you have put in here with showing the data rooms and all these other things, the toilet rooms and things like that, because it really does help to start to understand it, at least from my perspective, a lot better. So I do appreciate that. I just wanted to, I guess, give the counterpoint to the donut, if you will, is very inviting, but I don't know that the Crella is that much different inviting. But
That's right.
I do think that they're relatively similar sizes.
Dunkin' Donuts changed the name to Glazed Stick. I think they want it to be less French. But go ahead.
Joe,
Thank you. That's all. I just wanted to get that on. I appreciate it. I think Joe Huggins also had his hand up.
go ahead, Joe.
Thank you. I was just going back and forth with Kevin. On the first floor plan, could you switch to that? The mechanical room, there's only one mechanical room in both of these drawings. Is that how it's going? I know we haven't picked the final HVAC design, but that seems like awful small for the size building.
Well, the answer is that we don't have a size of a mechanical room. The mechanical room will be the size that it needs to be and the location it needs to be when we work through this with the mechanical system and the MEP. So please don't worry about that, because it will be the right size. And we placed it in the location where it is the most accessible to service and to everything else.
Understood. And I also just want to make sure that it's right sized. And when I say that, I want to make sure that the equipment is serviceable in there, because we've run into this before where the equipment is not serviceable easily. And I appreciate the fact that it's near an outside door and everything like that. And then I do see storage over there also. Is the intent? I know we might be having a rooftop penthouse, so we'll wait to see what that looks like. The other thing, we want to make sure we do have good roof access. I know it's early. I know I'm probably pushing it a little bit with asking that, but we had talked about that previously, that we can, service anything that's on the roof of the building.
Yes, but not like an elevator, a good roof access. So if you look at these roofs right here, you can see this, right, Joe?
Yeah.
We would get you to the roof safely, and we can talk about that.
Right. And then the last thing I just wanted to make sure is that there is an allowance for a generator, correct?
Oh, yes. We definitely, so if I look at this site plan right here, any of these, see where it says service up top? And that's actually a huge area, but it's for like the loading dock and all that. See where it says mech?
Yep.
That's actually that's where we put an enclosure for generator, transformer, all that stuff, because we know better.
Right. And the only reason I'm mentioning this to you is because we deal with this at all the buildings that we do have backup power at. That's very close to the neighbors. I just want you to keep that in mind on that side of the building.
Yeah, and the idea is that we would build an enclosure about it, and when we go on a visit or two, maybe to go to Swampscott, we'll see a good example of that. Right. For sound, and we do acoustic studies.
From experience, we've run into, how close it is to the neighbors, that we do end up getting a lot of complaints about noise and things like that. Just something to think about, that's all.
Agreed.
That's all I had.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I was just gonna chime in a little bit, offer a couple thoughts. I think obviously it being a school building, I think the most weight should be put on the school performing the way that the educators need it to. And I'm not an educator, so I'll defer to them in terms of which layout, which model works the best for their program and how they go about their business. Veering a little bit into more of what I do and what I know, I would make a couple arguments for the B1 model, just from a compactness, construction logistics, available area for geothermal. The smaller wall ratio makes the building more efficient. Less wall equals less energy to heat and cool. I will also maybe take a different vantage point than my esteemed colleague, the gentleman of leisure. I think the south orientation of E2, in my experience, is not ideal. I understand and agree that solar heating is the best, and it's free, and it's cheap, and it's easy. I think, conversely though, it's very, very hard to condition a building with so much southern exposure. And if you think about it in the summer months and the shoulders of the school year, so call it, May to September, to where the sun's more overhead, all of the classrooms on the exterior are going to get about the same amount of indirect sunlight. In the wintertime, October through March, you're going to get low altitude direct sunlight coming in through trees with no leaves. So you're going to get direct sunlight in through the glazing on all of those elevations. And I think in B1, in my mind, you end up with kind of 3 even sides of daylight exposure, direct sunlight. You'll get morning sun on the east elevation, you'll get midday sun on the south elevation, and you'll get the west setting sun in the afternoon. And of course, in the wintertime afternoon, it ends at 4. But that's when the kids are, in school while the sun is still up. I think in E2, what I've experienced is that those classrooms on the south side are going to be extraordinarily difficult to maintain conditioning during the winter time. And I've seen south elevation buildings like that where we're cooling year round on the south elevation while we're heating in the winter time on the north elevation. It's a notoriously difficult balance to strike, both from a design perspective and an operations perspective. I think B1, you end up with no classrooms on the north elevation, so everyone will have a equal piece of the pie during the school year for both direct and indirect sunlight. And then just generally from a sustainability perspective, less wall equals less energy to heat and cool. I think I know windows are great, natural light is great, but also the less glazing makes the wall more efficient. I think from a organization of mechanical systems and distribution, I think the B1 as a concept, in my mind, provides a little better layout for simplification of those MEP systems in terms of the overhead rock and distribution. So generally speaking, I would be in favor of B1, especially where the educators seem to be gravitating towards it.
That makes you feel better about the light situation.
That was great.
Right? Thanks, Greg. Chris?
Thank you, Carla. It's hard to follow up on that. That's way above my pay grade. But yeah, for me, the option, so B1 is $1 million cheaper. In the end, it's not going to be. We all know that prices are always going to change, so it is, at least you have a little bit of a cushion there. I do like the layout better, the parking layout, that's better. It's also safer because of the proximity to the existing building. It's further away, so we have more room to play with. And then future 50-year Killam, et cetera, from now, it seems like it'd be easier to reno or build something differently using the B1 layout as opposed to E2. If that gets done, we might not be around to see it, but yeah, it's. I mean, obviously the educators. I would go with whatever they would want when things are on par price-wise. If one if B1 was 50 million more than E2, that might not be the case, but where it's so close, I think it's best to go with whatever they're wanting. And it's a little cheaper, allegedly.
Does anybody else have any thoughts? Is there anyone else online?
No hands raised online. Great, thank you. The presentation was excellent, and the layout of the presentation was really helpful.
Well,
I'm sorry
we
to say,
don't,
but
well, here's the thing. We do have a little update on sustainability, but what?
Hold on that for 1 minute.
Yeah,
Do we need a vote for them to
Yes.
proceed with B1?
yeah, selection of the preferred option.
Well, you just said what it was. You can't do it that way. A vote to go with B1. I haven't.
Did I say that aloud?
Second, go ahead. You want to
It's
say?
like Christmas.
So make a motion.
Nancy's the
I'll make the motion
the
to
motion.
go for option B1.
Second.
Second by Sean. Okay.
With, but the architect is going to look at things in terms of
Absolutely,
getting it away from Havel Street and
correct.
all that kind of stuff that we
Yeah,
talked about.
With John's fingerprints. Yes, B1 with John's fingerprints all over it.
How does that,
Well,
how
he's
does that
right.
work, how does that work with the submission? Can you give them a submission looking like this, but then kind of slide it a little bit? Of course.
We have time.
There's a significant, there's a significant amount of design left to be done.
Significant.
And there will be more than minor tweaks along the way as they dive into all the minutia and details, so.
There'll be a lot of design.
Just wanted to make sure like that shifting wasn't.
No problem.
Okay. Tom?
Sorry to interject, and the answer may be no, but knowing that they're pretty particular about other things, is there specific language you have to use in this motion when you recommend B1 that complies with the MSBA rules?
Our official vote is actually next week. So this is just for the week, we're going to ask the designer to formally put together plans for that submission. But that's a good thought, and I will check into that. Thank you.
What you're saying is that for the MSBA and the submission, option B1 is at this point, is your preferred solution.
And this is our discussion. Any other discussion? And seeing none, and none online. Okay, we're going to the vote. Pat?
Yes.
Sean?
Aye.
John?
That was me.
That was you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right.
Sean?
Aye, isn't it?
Sean, yes.
John?
Aye.
Thank you. Chris?
Yes.
Kirk?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
And Carla? Yes. And the motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Yep, that was excellent. Sustainability.
There's an update. Do you guys have 10 minutes for a sustainability update, but not a huge discussion? We're just trying to show you what we're doing and where we are, and to let you know that there's a long process. Okay.
Oh, I am?
You said you were gonna do it. I'll do it if you want.
Okay. I need you to do this part.
Okay, here's the deal. The Sustainability Committee has been meeting. They're all really smart, and there's been a lot of discussion. This is not where we're describing all these systems. What we're telling you right now are what these systems are that we are currently still looking at. And they are still a range, but we've kind of gotten rid of a VRV system for certain reasons that people talked about, which had to do with refrigerants and stuff. And we're kind of, while we need it as a base option, a gas-fired chiller and boiler, old school gas file, it really just doesn't meet the MSB or IRA incentives anymore and won't in the future. So I'm just going to go back to where we are. On the left of this is a full geothermal system, all water source. It would have a whole bunch of wells, and it's actually maybe not something you would ever, in the end, totally do full, because it's actually not the most efficient thing to have full geothermal during the whole year. It doesn't really matter. On the total right side of this is still an all-electric building, but a full air source building. In other words, it's air source heat pumps, and we're still looking at that. It has cooling tower, electric boiler for heat and cold, but that's how it generates. We have shared some operating costs and all that stuff, but we won't get into it. And then we have two hybrid systems that are partially geothermal. By partially geothermal, we mean more than 50% because we want to get the IRA benefit, that's what we heard. But also, we want to get enough geothermal to do what it really wants to do in the building, and then have other things be able to be used in swing, at different times. Plant system number 2 is kind of a hybrid geothermal, and I'm, again, not going to get into it too much, but the idea is that you have some geothermal wells, but you also have a cooling tower and electric boiler for hot and cold, so both of them can generate heat and cold. And there's kind of like two systems that are literally hybrid, creating the same thing. It has its pros and cons, but we're looking at that. The plant system 3 that we're showing is half geothermal, meaning that hopefully all of the heat and cold is coming from the ground. That's the geothermal part. That's what geothermal does best. And then the other half, the air, the ventilation air, is air source on the roof and stuff like that. It's exactly what we did at Swampscott in the end. So, and all of it's coming from the ground. So I just want you to know we're looking at a couple different ways of doing hybrid system, those two middle, combo systems, so that we have something to really, really look at, price, and talk about. These are the kinds of really pragmatic ways of approaching it. Is everybody okay that we're looking at those things?
Lee, if I can, I would suggest that we have had some discussions with the Sustainability Committee. For various reasons, they have concerns about the next two that you have there, but they have not been taken off the table at this point. There has not been a request from this committee to do that. I think we're a little premature in discussing that today. I think we need to continue to evaluate the geothermal options right now. Worst case scenario is that we can't do geothermal. You basically said we have one option here because the other 3 all have geothermal. So I would strongly suggest that we're continuing to evaluate all 6. We still have to come back with the long-term operational costs as well on all of these and bring that to this committee at a later date so that they can fully understand it and they can vote on it.
We fully understand that the room level design options, as John said a couple weeks ago, can go with any of these 4 systems that we just talked about, whether it's displacement, chilled beams. There's been a lot of love for chilled beam, but that's okay. We haven't decided yet, and it is interchangeable, but that's in the future. So we want you to know that they're all on the table. And should I just the idea here is that we're not going to decide on a system until schematic design. We have time. Jenny's going to tell us how much time we have. But our decision altogether is going to be based on 3 factors. One is first cost, and that's one of the reasons why we're talking to Brightcore, geothermal consultant, and why we will be looking at the idea of a test well, but they're also looking at options that have to do with schedule and logistics, time, because time is is it going to push things, or can they do them before or after? How are we going to do this? So it's all about logistics and schedule and cost. First cost. The second one is incentives. We have a fairly good idea about incentives now. But if we're going to do geothermal, it's pretty clear that we want to at least have 50% of the energy load from there so that we can get the IRA as currently defined, because it just makes sense. And that all of those 4 systems, not that we had listed, do qualify for the maximum MSBA reimbursement. So incentives kind of will go along with it, and we'll look at it as we go. And then operational costs, we started to show within the Sustainability Committee operational cost charts. But now that we're looking at other hybrid options and all of that, and we want to really understand them, we need to just do it again over time, over the next couple of months, and then really integrate it with first cost, incentive, operational cost to get total decision cost. And we can't do any of the decision unless we understand whether we can do geothermal or how much we can do geothermal, how it affects the project, and what the capacity of a test well is. And those are the things that we're looking at. And the truth is that we will be going in and just talk about that here.
No, this is unrelated. Yes, I'll go back to that previous slide.
Is there a,
No,
I could say something about schedule.
So, with respect to, if the committee decides, or thinks that geothermal is a very viable option, we've kind of taken a look at the schedule of when we want to finish SD, when we need to finalize the decisions, and if we wanted to get a test well done in time to inform that decision, then like within August, we would want to be releasing a geothermal contractor to begin drilling a test well.
And if anybody,
And then the decision would be finalized in like November, but we have to give that time to.
Behind the scenes, we all talked about, we really need around the beginning of November to make a decision on the system, which gives us a solid 3 months. And we have been hitting it earlier, and I'm glad we did because it seems quite complicated, especially with the site. So we really have to hit it from all these sides in order to get there and stay on that schedule to get that. I think we have a smart group and we can get there. Does that all make sense? We're trying to let you know that you do have time, but we do have to do the work.
Doable is that August? If how is that feasible to be able to do in August?
What are you talking about?
The test well.
Oh, so the test well doesn't have to be done in August. We would recommend that we engage the test well contractor by the end of August, and then they'll have it gives them 8 weeks basically to do their everything they need to do. Yeah.
I thought we had to do it.
No. Yeah.
So we talked a lot about this behind the scenes, and everybody has a slightly different thing, but the truth is that we need to do all these 3 areas. The reason the test well comes up is because it measures the capacity on your site of a well. And if you end up doing geothermal, you're going to want that information to help make a decision, to know the number of wells, to know the time it takes to drill those wells, and to know what the energy capacity is, and all that.
Right.
So,
Lee, with all due respect, at this point, it's very premature to be talking about a test well in this meeting.
you know what? I kind of disagree with. I know you're on the line, and we shouldn't fight like brothers, but I'm bringing it up because it is a very important pinch point in the process of making a decision, and I feel it is responsible to at least let everybody know that it is a very important point of reference.
When we had all the experts on the line, they told us very clearly, decide if you're doing geothermal first, and if you are, then you do a test well. You don't do it the other way around.
Good. That is your job to inform the client of your opinion.
That was not my opinion. That was the opinion of the experts that you had on.
Okay.
Yep, thank you. I just wanted to bring up, in addition to these important items, the Sustainability Working Group also discussed, we've left solar off of this. And when calculating costs of various systems, we have an opportunity to work with our local municipal light plant to design solar into this. And so our discussions cycled around the feasibility of being able to roughly calculate how much solar we could get on the top of whatever the preferred solution is, as well as potentially considering we've got a great parking area laid out there. We saw some very nice parking structures at the Watertown School. So I'm not sure on the timing, but again, at the big ballpark level, at the same time that we're talking about potential generator sites, you know, this would be something that I just want to make sure that we have to, in order to work with our local municipal light plant, we have to stay ahead of this and keep them informed, so.
Thanks, Carla. I guess my two things, I don't think the layout is conducive to solar if we end up going with the B1 option, which I think we did. I'm not a solar expert, so we'll see how that goes.
Are you saying the roof?
Yes.
Oh, you can just turn them. It doesn't matter which way. It's not a pitched roof. It's all flat. So it doesn't matter which way the building is running. You just turn them that way.
No, I meant more of the orientation compared to the other option that we could have picked.
Solar panels are just, what I'm trying to help is that when you lay out solar panels on a flat surface on the roof, they just turn them the right way.
Oh yeah, no, I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
I'm just also going by page 17 in the packet that shows the optimal solar orientation is the other building and not this one, which is what you.
But that's that was for the windows.
I see.
I'm sorry, that was for the windows. And it's just a funny thing. When you look at a roof, you can put the solar panels any direction. That's all we're getting at. So she's talking about those panels on the roof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the 136 hypothetically million, that didn't include any of the heating and cooling kind of options, or did you build in a buffer for that, or?
Yeah, so the base estimate we included the most expensive first cost option, which would be the full geothermal, in order to be conservative. So if we select any other HVAC option, it's just less money.
Perfect.
We're being the most conservative.
So we've talked about other budgets, we've compared, we had a full geothermal system in there. So now we're just gonna keep comparing the same thing until we make the decision.
So it wasn't gonna get added on to the 136 and become 170 or
No,
something?
this would be like the.
So that's even better.
There was no money in the budget for solar panels, right?
That does not include solar panels. We did estimate solar PV as part of this round of estimating, and it was, I put myself on the line, I think it was an additional $175,000 for solar panels on the roof, and then about $2.5 million for the solar canopies over the parking.
Yeah.
Because it includes more site utilities, structure, roof, foundations. It's just a lot more.
I'm going to suggest that it does not make sense to put solar panels in anywhere that you don't get free structure. In other words, the roof is a free structure. To put canopies in the parking lot does not make sense, money-wise.
So that's not included in that budget. And we will design, no matter what, the building will be designed with roof loads and everything that can handle solar panels.
Lee, I think it's actually required by the new building zone, right, that you have to have that in the.
It would make no sense, would it, anymore?
Yeah. Yeah, and the 136 that we're talking about includes the full geothermal with the best estimates we have right now, but again, we have a lot of questions that are outstanding that may actually potentially impact that cost.
Just from a decision-making standpoint, solar would be behind the geothermal wells in the HVAC system.
Yeah,
So
because
it's
there's
not-
no
so
like
it's-
test well required for the
Right.
geothermal or for the PV.
So
There's no analog of a test well that's required for the solar PV.
So the presentation tonight with geothermal wells and sustainability wasn't meant to exclude PV from the design. It's just,
You know
I don't wanna say back burner, but it's further down the line, schedule wise.
When we talk about doing a mostly or all electric building, the reason to do it and then have PVs is that you're adding renewable resources on site if you can, wherever you can. And I don't know if we do any buildings that don't put PVs on the roof anymore. It's almost like, why not? You know, you can always get somebody to pay for it, you do it, you just do it the right way. So yes, I think I know I mentioned it, the project, because we have, I think at Swampscott, they're actually using their contingency, some of their contingency to
It's left, because it must have been under budget.
Well, it was within the contingency to do the PVs on the roof.
Yeah.
Yes. So you can wait till the end of the bill to see where you stand, and then maybe, now we can do this. But we've already set it up so it can be. We designed it and all that, so it's all good.
The massive construction aspect, which I didn't know of solar in the parking lot, so it makes no sense to think about that later. None.
That is something that it really takes a real effort to do those canopies, and they are quite expensive. But keep an open mind, you never know what's gonna happen. Who knows?
Coming back to your consultant for the test well, Bright Score, is it? Bright Core. Do they not have, I don't know who they are, but do they not have kind of historical data on
the
geothermal conditions in Massachusetts, eastern Massachusetts? I mean, we know we're in a low enthalpy zone here. We're not, as I've said before, this is not New Zealand or Iceland. So they must have some background data. And do they think they need more to predict?
No, Mike is right again. That Bright Core, they can guess based on all the jobs that they do around here, what the capacity and the well, and what a good number is to use for all of their assumptions. And they do have data as to, our mechanical engineers and others have data of this area. It's not specific, and you don't have to do into that. You can have allowances. It's just not, it's never perfect. So we will use them for that information. So you're right.
The one thing we don't know is how deep the bedrock is, right? That has a big influence on it. We never went down to rock without geotechnical information.
Not yet.
No. Now, what kind of influence?
Well, taking heat out of rocks is much more efficient than taking it out of sandy soils. So if the rock is 200 feet down,
if we hit rock, it's actually a good thing.
If we hit rock, it's a good thing. Yes. Yeah. If it's 200 feet down, forget geothermal. It just doesn't work.
So let's let that play out. Everybody must be tired at this point. I'm starting to glaze over.
So, yeah, the final piece was just a quick look at what we're doing next. So we have a community, we're meeting again in a week to vote on the PSR preferred schematic report, which we'll provide on Thursday. All the sections of it except the preferred option, which we voted on tonight. We'll have a community meeting also next week, Wednesday, to present the preferred option. We will be submitting the PSR to the MSBA on August 21st. Then the MSBA will review it for an unknown period of time, but presumably not more than 30 days, because then they need to give us 10 days to respond to their comments before the before this, we have a conference call to review the PSR comments. We'll also be preparing for a meeting of the MSBA Facilities Assessment Subcommittee, FAS. There's 2 potential dates that we're holding both as options. Those are September 11th or September 25th. And then that all culminates on October 30th. There's the MSBA board meeting where they will approve the project to proceed to SD. However, in the interim, we've already started working on SD because we can't actually wait until October 30th to move ahead. So we're gonna forge ahead.
The FAS is its own kind of MSBA committee. It's kind of design oriented and education. And their primary purpose, I believe, is to understand why you selected your chosen scheme and to offer comments.
Besides LBA and Colliers, who else? Does this whole committee meet with them?
No, but Collier, well, I don't, I'll have to find a little more who should be there, but typically, you know, the 3 people who showed up in the the superintendent. Carla, Tom, and
Right, yeah.
And it's usually something like that, but I think because it's a Zoom, it's probably a Zoom now, and I'm sure that you could have a number of people there.
Okay, that's what I figured. Thank you. Great. Thank you.
Sorry that takes.
For all that information. OPM reports about financials and total project budget.
Mike's gonna put it up on the screen.
Yep.
All right, can everybody see my screen now?
Yes.
So this is our standard budget summary that we provide to everybody every month.
Mike,
This is,
Mike, can you make it a little bigger, please?
I can, but you usually just gonna start cutting off.
Thank you.
It's in the backup. It's in the backup.
This is in the packet, that is correct, yes. So, we have several items in here, but we really have about not even a half a dozen items that are specifically, items that we're using within the budget right now. The A&E feasibility study line, the OPM feasibility study line, environmental and site and other costs that we have in there. And then we have our contingency line right here, which brings us to our 2.2 million total. Currently what we've committed to date is basically 1.3 of that 2.2 million. And those are on the contracts. I can show you those on the summary page. If there are any specific questions on this, I'm happy to answer them. If not, I will probably dive into the details on the next few pages, which support this.
Yep. Thank you.
So first and foremost is looking at budget adjustments. This is any adjustments we need to go from the original budget to where we are today. All of these are grayed out. We brought this forward previously. What we've always said is anything new will not be grayed out. Anything that we've already talked about in the past will be grayed out. So the good news is we haven't had any need for any budget adjustments since we last met back in June. So again, happy to answer any questions, but I believe this is mostly information that everybody has seen before. Not mostly, this is information people have seen before. That brings us to the next section, which is our commitments, which is any contracts, POs, change orders, things of that nature. Again, everything is grayed out. There's nothing new. The last new one we had was the cartoon that we talked back in June, and we approved that at the last meeting. And other than that, we have nothing new to report. Going forward into the next section, this is our invoices. I'm just going to zoom out just for a second so you can see. What we're going to probably start doing, if it's okay with the committee, is we're going to try to keep this to a one-page summary. So as we add newer ones, we're probably going to start hiding some of the older ones. They're always going to be there. They'll always be there if people need it. We're just trying to be efficient with our review. We're really focusing in on things that aren't gray because, again, we've already previously reviewed those gray ones. The ones that we're looking at tonight, there's 2 rounds of invoicing from Valley Bernsinger, and that's because I think we got their invoices, I think, the day of the meeting last night, and we didn't have a chance to get them over. But those were gotten over for June. We've also got the July invoices. You've got Collier's Project Leaders July invoice, and you have the cartoon invoice for the first 4 of 6 pillars. And that should be consistent with what you see on the warrant tonight when we'll get to the warrant in just a little bit. Going on from there, we have worked on our cash flows, looking at our actual cumulative versus our estimated cumulative. We're actually projecting under, and you can actually see that graphically here a little bit easier maybe than the numbers themselves. The reality is what we're looking at is I think the OPM is slightly under on our budgeting, on our billing. We've also forecasted the potential to start spending contingency as early as March. We really have not spent a lot of that other than the $6,000 for cartoon recently. So you can see that delta there, if we had that up, that's about $350,000. That's more than half of the difference here between what we're thinking we might spend by now, which is $1,034,000, and what we've actually spent, which is $585,000. So from that perspective, the design team's contract is basically a one-time contract that's all going to eventually be caught up. Ours is a cost plus not to exceed, and we're hoping that we have a lot of that contingency left at the end, which is again a good thing. Any questions?
Nope.
Nope, okay. So that's just the graph that we were showing there. So we don't have any more questions. I was going to jump into total project budget and review that. One thing I did notice, and I will resend this to Jackie tomorrow to send out, I think when we had the print set up here, we actually cut off a couple lines on the bottom of this on the package that you got. If people got the live Excel file, it's actually in there. They just were outside the printable area. So if you look here, the last line we have here is the diesel generator. I redid a new version of it with everything in there. And you can see how we have about 6 more lines that were added in there. Each of these options that we have here listed, option A, A1, B1, and E2 are all backed up by the 3011 form. We actually went through it and completed the 3011 form to review those to try and estimate not only total project budget, but also see what the eligibility may be. Again, that was included in your package. I'm happy to go into that detail, but the summary level here, I think what we talked about previously is that the option A, code updates and repairs, really doesn't satisfy the needs of the district, but it's a requirement of the MSBA for us to show that. So that would be a $61 million potential cost, but that really doesn't address any of the shortcomings of the current building, especially the enrollment, the size of the building versus the enrollment you're looking at. Option 1A was the additional renovation option. Again, we do have to do that with the MSBA. I think on this project, not only is it the most expensive option, it's also the option that takes up the most land and takes a longer time period to do it. And I think that we were sticking away from that. The two options that we were really focused on tonight is the B1 and the E2 options, which are 35.5 and 36.5 respectively, so about $1 million difference. And the town share is keeping that ratio over about $1 million. Did talk earlier about some alternates. I think Lee mentioned that the numbers that we're showing here actually include full geothermal. If we would go to a hybrid geothermal, we could save $1.9 million. If we would go to the heat pump and chiller and electric boiler, it would be savings of $7.27 million on that. Air source heat pumps with VRS would be 6.5. Again, none of these they're not concurrent. You can't have multiple options there, but we were talking about various different options in there. We have the solar in there, we have the diesel generator in there, we have increasing the size of the switchboards for the electrical, which may be required depending on which system we ultimately pick. And then there was a question on battery storage. At this time, we didn't really price that. I think Leah and Jenny, maybe if you can correct me, I think we didn't really have enough information for the SPH to do an accurate price on that.
Storage?
We don't know anything about the batteries. We don't know enough. Sure.
That's what I mean, yeah. So it's not something that we could price at this time, but we can certainly continue to evaluate that as we go down the line. Offsite improvements, this is based off of a high-level best estimate based off of the traffic studies and the different discussions we've had as far as crosswalks and adjusting intersections and maybe sidewalks and redoing the parking and stuff like that. What this doesn't really take into account is all the potential expansion of that scope. If we put a sidewalk in and it needs to be ADA compatible, how do we have to address that with the yards adjacent to it, things of that nature? So trying to get a better understanding of that. That $2 million is something that could be included into the project if you wanted to. Often, this times we see districts doing that outside the project because it can be done often more cost effectively without having a general contractor managing that, where it's outside of the project and it's going to be an ineligible cost typically anyway, because you're going to be exceeding your site allowance just with what we're doing on the sites. This would be all site work that would be in an excluded value. And then last but not least, the current budget was assuming check 149 design bid build rather than 149A CM at risk. And we were putting about a $5 million premium if we were to go to that. I think we had talked at the last meeting about having a longer discussion on design bid build versus CM at risk. But in talking with Carla, I think we decided with everything else going on with the PSR, we were going to hold off and do that probably right after we get the PSR completed. That was okay with everybody. Last but not least, we did have some qualifiers here just so that people have an understanding of some of the assumptions made to tie up to these numbers. Again, I'm happy to go into any of the details here or any detailed explanation or questions if anybody has them. But I didn't want to dive too deep into it this time if we don't have to.
I have a question.
I see that there's a diesel generator on here. Is it my understanding that natural gas fire generators we lose points for? I mean, why a diesel generator?
I don't believe so, and actually that was a question we actually asked, and I think the design team was going to look into that because our comment was typically we find the initial cost from a gas generator, even the operational cost long term, can often be less, and you don't go through the hassle of having to fill that diesel fuel tank all the time. So typically you default to diesel if gas is not available or if it's an emergency shelter. We don't have either of those, so that is something that, again, maybe Lee and Jenny, I know we had talked with them last week and they were going to be doing some research on that, but we didn't have the price of the gas, but I would say the gas is, for the same size, would be approximately the same value, maybe a little bit less.
It hasn't been decided. It's usually a tank that's held underneath the generator. And in general, it doesn't affect, like, for example, it's not calculated in lead because it never comes on. So in general, it's not considered part of the energy usage of the building because it's not used. Do you know what I mean? It's just sitting.
Because you're saying we don't lose power too terribly often.
Right. It's an emergency generator. It's not a functioning part of the building. So now there might be other caveats to that, but that's generally how it's looked at. So, but we haven't decided what the stuff is.
I just think that with a natural gas fired generator, you're not storing fuel on site. You know, it's just kind of piped in. And with more, so I have a risk management role, and when we look at more convective storms and the future of climate change, and an infinite mindset, the idea of being able to have an emergency shelter there is useful and not reliant on a finite supply of diesel.
Okay.
That's only my
I don't
thinking.
know that setup. I don't know much about that setup.
If I can actually interject here a little bit, if it was to be an emergency shelter, I think the design criteria is different than for a standard school, and one of those designs is that it has to be diesel. Because in the event of a natural disaster, the natural gas may be shut off in the street, and then
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
No questions, Mike?
Excellent.
Thank
you. I must have done a great job in presenting.
Excellent.
Thank you. So, So I'll look to Nancy for,
Make a motion to accept the minutes as.
No, not yet.
Oh, yeah, not yet, okay,
For
sorry.
the,
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
approve the warrant.
For the warrant. Make a motion to approve the payment of the warrant, is that how you say it?
Right, of the invoices
Of the
submitted.
invoices submitted, okay.
Second.
Seconded by Ed. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. Pat?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Kirk?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
And Carla, yes, and the motion passes. Thank you. Now we can go to the minutes.
Make a motion to accept the minutes as presented, or submitted,
The 7:22.
for 7:22.
Second.
Seconded by Ed. Any discussion? Time for the vote. Pat?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Kirk?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Carla, yes. And that motion passes. Thank you. Future agenda items. We have a meeting next Monday. KSBC meeting. We have a community meeting on the 14th at 7 PM in the Reading Public Library. Anybody going to Uxbridge tomorrow? Me, Nancy, Pat, Chris. Anybody need a ride? I'm gonna take
We'll go
Nancy.
together.
Yeah, and then if anybody else would like to come and would like a ride, happy to bring you. Any other future agenda items? Yes.
Quick question. So, and not to step on the beef between Lee and Mike. Do we need to give, what's the process for us to give geothermal guidance? Like, is there a process that we have to go through? Is that done in the sustainability committee? Like,
So the sustainability committee will meet and discuss and come back to this board with information and
so
recommendations.
that's taken care of there, not here.
Right, and it'll come back here and we will vote on it.
Yeah, and I would think that we would probably review it with them first, but you're gonna be getting a presentation as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
I think just to piggyback on that a little bit, I think if you want to just think of big picture decisions we need to make, given guidance on the preferred schematic, the solution is a big thing that we're getting through, which pretty much just got through for August. Maybe one of the next big decisions we'll have, and maybe this shapes up to be in September, is design bid build versus CM at risk. And then maybe that's September, and then maybe in October with Jenny's guideline of November 1, you can imagine October, we're gonna be spending a lot of time talking about geothermal in the HVAC system, so we're gonna mentally, I think those, Lee, are sort of the big decisions we need to make coming up.
I believe so. Can I ask a question? Do you feel today when we talked about those two options that I pushed one of the options or not, or that you really thought about it and decided on the one you liked the best? Do you feel like I was fair?
I think you were fair. I was looking at what the educators were looking for primarily, because when I came in, I was looking at the longer one because of the light.
So was I.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think hearing what the educators were looking for and understanding better what it is that they like about community helped me, and understanding that you're gonna make that center space obviously something that is open and visible. It may change my mind, but you didn't push one or the other.
Thank you. I'm asking just to make sure.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if others felt that way.
I thought it was a fair presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I was sold on B1 before you walked in the door. Maybe I was tunnel vision.
All right, I just wanted to know.
Just a couple of quick things. I know we had talked about, and Pat specifically requested the schedule for KSBC meetings, and I think it's done. I think it might be with you guys, just to give us out like, okay, it's good, so if we can just close that loop so he can schedule all of his other permanent building committee meetings, that would be great. I know John asked some questions. I know, maybe a month ago you asked a bunch of questions, or a few weeks. Did you get answers to those?
No, that was on geotechnical?
Yeah.
No, didn't get any answers.
Okay, so that's.
They're not vital, they're just, they're comments on the geotechnical report. It was a good report, it was a fine report, but it had some gaps in it, let's put it that way.
Okay. So if we
The-
can
the
get.
main-
Well, we got an email back with answers to those
Oh, you
questions.
did? Well, I didn't see it, let's put it that way.
Oh, well, Jenny's not here right now, but I'll remind, the team. Yeah, just send it off so that everybody can see those answers. Thank you. Thanks for reminding us.
Then, it's not, you had it, LBA's presentation was different from what was in the packet. And, Mike, your presentation was different, so if you could get that to, Jackie, so we could get that in the final packet, that would be great. And after this meeting, or tomorrow, Jackie's gonna send out a campaign finance document that that town council came up with to help guide us in what we can or can't do or say as whatever our positions are. So if people could, just as a little bit of homework for next meeting, if you could just take a look at that document, try and figure out maybe where you fall within it. Town council's gonna talk to us in general terms, but if you have like very, very specific, it's almost like we have to, like even being like a public official, if I have an issue that's an ethical issue, I can go to our council or I can go to the state ethics board. So, but we wanna talk in more general terms of things we can or can't do. So if you could just take a look at it, and in case we can kind of put that behind us and go from there. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Pat,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Kirk,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Nancy.
Yes.
Carla, yes. Thanks, everyone. We're adjourned.
Thank you, Carla.
Thanks, Carl.